I found this Polish Kolaczki cookies recipe from 1989, and I have a ton of jam. And I remember buying these as a child from the grocery store because I grew up in Europe and it's very common. But today we're gonna be making it. However, I think this is a little bit of Americanized recipe because it also has cream cheese in it, 4 ounce room temperature cream cheese, very soft, has to be soft, and then 1.5 stick of butter. We're gonna mix this all together. You can either use a hand whisker or you can use the food processor, the blender, whichever is easier for you. I wanted to do it fast, so I used the hand mixer, and I'm adding half of my flour, which is 1.5 cup all-purpose flour, into the buttery mixture and combining this all together. And then once it's all combined, I can add the second half of the flour, and basically the dough is done. It's gonna be very sticky, so once we start working with the dough, we have to work very fast. So here you can see it's very wet, but I'm adding the other half and then mixing it, and it starts getting a little bit harder to mix it with hands. So if I ever make this recipe again, I would definitely use the standing mixer because it would just be much easier. Like, technology, we have to use it because it does really make our life so much easier. So at this point, I decided to go in with my hand just to get like everything all together. I do like this recipe. The dough came out very tasty, but I did notice something that I could have done a little differently for my dough to be easier worked at. Have to put the dough in the fridge for an hour to make it faster. Otherwise, it will take like 2 hours because it's pretty big dough. I flattened it out and then I covered it with a plastic sheet, and it only took me about maybe 35 minutes to cool this down. And a few days ago, I posted a video where I made pear tarts with frangipane, and in that recipe, in the dough, we also added oil, sunflower oil. And the reason for that oil is that we can work with the dough much easier and that would not be cracking at the edge, just like you see right here. So maybe if I added some oil to this, it will be much easier to roll out. And with the pizza cutter, I'm cutting little squares, almost like rectangles. It has to be like long enough to fold on the side. These cookies always reminds me of pigs in a blanket. And cutting it on the side, the edges off too. I'm gonna put this side back in the fridge because it's getting warm and it's getting very hard to work with because it is very sticky. I think it's because of the cream cheese. Just cutting off that edge right there. We don't need that. Want to make it look pretty. Here I have a raspberry jam. I'm using 2 kinds of jam. You can use 1 kind of jam or 3 kinds of jam. It's really up to you. Adding a teaspoon in the middle. I'm trying to make it like kind of straight upwards so it will be easier to fold. And I have a little bit of water on the side, and I fold one side, put a little bit of water on it, and then fold the other side to layer it down. And I was a little skeptical they would not stick, but it did, so it worked. And here's another one. See, my dough is getting warm and very flexible. A little bit of water and close it on that side too. And that is done. Yeah, after baking, it kind of ran a little bit, but the jam that ran like on the edges, it became almost like caramelized, and it was actually pretty delicious. But for this, you might want to play around and see which jam is more thicker so it doesn't run as much as it did for me. I baked this at 350 for like about 18 minutes, so between 15 to 20 minutes. Keep an eye on it until it's a golden brown like this, because every oven is different. I think my oven is not as strong as it should be, but I have this really awesome tool that dispenses powdered sugar, so I have more control over where the powdered sugar lands. And I just I know it looks like a kid's toy, but it's kind of cute though. I love this thing. Just sprinkle over it wherever I want it. And if you sprinkle when it's hot, then the sugar will basically melt into it, so you'll have to sprinkle again. But that is it. It is done. It's almost like crumbly, very moist. Shortbread cookies is the closest I can think of for the cookies texture. Very tasty filling. I mean, it's up to whatever jam you use, but the dough came out really good. I like it. But next time I think I will be adding a little bit of oil to it, just a teaspoon.